Okay, we are getting ready to start studying economics, and there are going to be six guiding principles that we're going to look at through the whole entire semester. Sometimes it's referred to the handy dandy guide. The first principle of economics is that people economize. You face choices every single moment of your day, whether it's what to wear, um, on a weekend, should I study or should I go out? Um, and all of you are seniors, so should I get a job or should I go to school for the next 2 to 4 years? All economic actions, whether it's by individuals, corporate, or government, are the result of choices made by different individuals. And when we are making these choices, people economize. They are choosing the best alternative for them that involves the least cost. So that is a huge concept. When we make a choice, and everyone does, we always look to see what involves the greatest benefit at the least cost. And when you change your cost, that oftentimes changes your decision. I said not cleaning your room. I know when Devin lived at home, and I would ask him to clean his room, and he wouldn't, and I'd ask again, and he wouldn't, and I'd ask again, and he wouldn't. And the moment I put some sort of cost on that, all right, if I come home and your room's not clean, all your electronic equipment's going to be gone. It's amazing. By changing the cost to him, um, his room was always clean when I got home. And then this going to college, or should I get a full-time job? You know, it used to be um, when my husband graduated and when my father-in-law graduated, you could make a very good living without a college education. Well, now it's become even more difficult, whether it's some sort of trade school or whether it's some sort of four-year college. The cost of not going to college today has risen um, by a lot, and so most people decide that it's a good idea and that it's best for them to go to some sort of extra schooling after high school. All choices involve cost, and we just said that. People always have to give up something when they make a choice. When we choose, it involves two actions. By making a choice, you are choosing one thing, but you're also refusing something else, and this is huge. It's very difficult for me to get students to understand. There's a lot of times where somebody will say something and you go, oh, I didn't have a choice. You did have a choice, and this is trying to get yourself to think in an economic way. There are always alternatives to everything, but sometimes the cost is so high that it might not seem that it's actually an option. And sometimes I ask students in school, how many of you do not have a choice whether you are here or not? And I always get at least a few that they think that they don't have a choice. Well, the reason they think that is because the cost to them, because of punishments by parents or whatever, that it is so high that it seems like it's not an option. But it is an option. They just aren't willing to deal with the cost that's involved with that. So you're always constantly looking at what opportunities have to be given up when we make a choice. So even you need to get this idea of cost as a money thing out of your head. By choosing to be here today, you are giving up the opportunity to do something else. So all choices involve cost. People respond to incentives in predictable ways, and incentives are something that I try and use a lot. I try and figure out what ways I can use an incentive to get students to do something. And one of the big things that you have discovered is this idea that points are not an incentive to get students to learn. And that was a big thing for me. I have to figure out what it is that will get you to act in a certain way. And so incentives are these actions or awards or rewards that encourage people to act in a certain way. You change the incentive, the choice that people make will also change. And thinking about the choice to study for a test. Some of you will always study for a test, and it's something that is very important to you. Your grades are really important. But what if I gave everyone the same grade regardless of how you did? So those of you who are studying and studying to get the A, well, it doesn't matter now. So I know that I can predict what you're going to do by saying everyone gets an A regardless. Well, now you have no incentive to study. Should I drive my car to school or not? Well, what happens if you're realizing that 25% of all of the cars in the parking lot are being vandalized every single day? That might give you a different incentive not to drive your car. Should I run a 10K race? Well, most of us would probably say no, it's not even on my radar. But what if we say anyone who finishes gets $5,000? We change the incentive, and we can change. Maybe not everyone would be willing to do that, but I would venture I would run a 10K for $5,000, and I would imagine a lot of you would do the same thing. Economic systems influence individual choices and incentives. We're looking at, if you look at politics and what things that our government provides in terms of our economy, this is an economic system. Are we in a system where we don't have any safety nets? Are we in an economic system where the government gets really involved and they help people, and we have unemployment, and we have welfare, and we have Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid? All of these things in terms of our economic system, how our government influences the choices that we make. So individual choices are influenced by the rules and customs of the economy of the country. And so as these things change, we just now had the Affordable Health Care Act passed. And so now there are different incentives in terms of what businesses and employees and how they react to all of this. If you have more than 50 employees or anyone who works more than 35 hours, you have to provide insurance. Well, if you're right on the edge of that, you might have an incentive to get rid of some of these employees as opposed to offering them insurance. Or if you've got some workers that you're just going to take, and instead of having them work 40 hours, you're going to have them work 35 hours. That's actually happened here at Southwood. And so if you have, and we'll talk later about command economies and free market economies, but when you look at a command economy, you're looking at economies that the government gets very much involved. And so people will act differently when they know that there's a safety net out there, as opposed to in free market economies where they know if they don't succeed, then they're just not going to have any money, or they're going to be on their own. Number 5, voluntary trade creates wealth. By focusing on what we do well and then trading with others, everyone ends up being better off. So you can typically improve your situation by trading something that you have a lot of or that you value less for something in which is relatively scarce for you and that you value more. So you have a skill that you can provide to an employer, and they will give you income. So you have a surplus of whatever it is that you're good at, and they will pay you that because that's relatively scarce. So you are willing to trade your labor for income. And the same thing happens with countries. It would be very difficult. A lot of people are all about buying American-made products, and that's a good thing. But if you think about in terms of the resources that we have available to us here in the United States, and we'll look at resources and define all those later, but if you look at all the people that we have and the natural resources and the technology that exists, it might be better if we focus on the things that we do well and let other countries focus on their things, get very, very good at it, and then trade so that everyone can be better off. And that should say number 6, choices have consequences that lie in the future, and I truly believe in this. Economics can be described as the study of choices people make as they forecast the future. Should I go to college now or get a job? Well, why would you choose to postpone making money for 4 years? Well, the whole entire goal of that is to know that in the future you're going to be better off. So you're going to make choices today that are definitely going to have consequences that lie in the future. I always have seniors come up and ask me, how can I move my GPA? The most important time of securing a GPA is your freshman year. By the time you get to be a senior, it's very, very difficult to move it very much. And so you're realizing now as seniors, I want to go to a certain college. I want to get scholarships. Well, because of the things that you've done for the last 3 years, some of those things, you're not going to be able to go necessarily to the college that you want to. You're not going to be able to qualify for scholarships that you were hoping to get. And so all of these are because of choices when you were younger that you made that now are coming back to haunt you. So these are some things that I want you to think about and ask yourself if you think these statements are true or false. The best things in life are free. The largest cost of going to college is tuition, room, and board. The purpose of economic activity is to improve the well-being of some people at the expense of others. Anything worth doing is worth doing well, and life is priceless. So I want you to ask yourself, and we'll definitely talk about all of these in class, are these statements true or false? And I want you to try and think of it in terms of the 6 principles that we just looked at.